Let's do it. We can vote here right now, Chief.
We've got a quorum. They're just not all in their seats.
Oh.
You know what? Why don't we just take a? Why don't we just take a 10-minute break now?
There's a sandwich.
All right.
Recognize them for their efforts. So human trafficking and sex workers has been a complex and challenging issue here in our community. However, it's always encouraging to be in a room full of people that really deeply care about the issue and the well-being of this community. So in January of this year, the cross-department coordination team was built on one mission: to address sex workers-related crime through collaboration, innovation, and relentless commitment. The team consisted of community development, library and community services, public works, city attorney's office, and the police department. We have heard from the community. Several had mentioned in public comment that they have seen a significant difference. However, we recognize that this work needs to continue to make sure that our streets continue to be safe. The results have been measured not just in numbers, but in lives impacted and trust built within this neighborhood. This team is an example of what we can accomplish when different departments and agencies collaborate together to find solutions. So we look forward to continuing the efforts through this team. So I will now turn it over to Commander Warner. We'll talk a little bit about those efforts and that work, and then future recommendations.
Thank you, Chief. City Council, Mr. Mayor, City Attorney, and City Managers, members of the public, thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. I just want to give you an update on our human trafficking and prostitution efforts. I will try to make this as quick as possible so you can get on with your other business. So today what we're going to go over is prostitution versus human trafficking. The loitering law before it was repealed, the explanation of Senate Bill 357, also known as the Safer Streets for All Act, the unintended consequences of SB 37 and the repeal of the law that we most often use, and our actions so far and ideas to address the human trafficking and prostitution issue. So the first thing I want to go over is prostitution versus human trafficking. Prostitution is what we all know, or we think we know, and we believe it to be a voluntary act. So prostitution, by definition, is voluntarily engaged in sexual act or contact with another person in return for giving or receiving a fee or thing of value. So even if the person chooses to engage in this prostitution as a profession, it often is full of exploitive and demeaning circumstances. And because people believe that prostitution is voluntary with the sex worker and the sex purchaser, people think it's a victimless crime. They both voluntarily did what they did, no harm, no foul. But that's not really the case. Human trafficking, on the other hand, is a crime involving the exploitation of someone for the purposes of compelled labor or commercial sex acts through the use of force, fraud, or coercion, treats a human being like a commodity. They do this through threat or use of force, coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power, vulnerability, or giving payments or benefits to a person in control of the victim. The sex worker is basically property at this point. This is, for all intents and purposes, is tantamount to slavery. So to combat this, prior to 1996, what we had was the 647B of the penal code, which was prostitution. Now, again, by definition, prostitution is the exchange of money or something of value for sex acts. Now, this is very difficult to prove, and of course, unless you're there when the actual agreement is made, or they admit to you when you arrest them or contact them, which they very rarely do. So January 1st of 1996, 653.22 of the Penal Code went into effect. This was loitering with the intent to commit prostitution. Now, this was done in an attempt to actually address the prostitution before it happened. Now, when I say loiter, I really want you to pay attention to that word, because by definition, it's very basic. It means to be in a public area for a period of time or repeatedly with no real purpose. Okay, so you need to keep that in mind. So 653.22A1 of the Penal Code. By definition, it's repeatedly beckons, stops, engages in conversation with, or attempts to stop or engage in conversation with passerbys indicative of soliciting for prostitution. That addresses the people in the cars driving by, the sex purchasers. Now, if you drive through an area known for prostitution, that's not loitering. Okay, if you repeatedly drive through that area and you call people over to your car, you try to make agreements with them, then you start getting into that loitering. For the actual sex worker, repeatedly stop or attempt to stop motor vehicles by hailing the drivers, waving arms, making any other bodily gestures, or engages or attempts to engage the drivers or passengers of the motor vehicles in conversation indicative of soliciting for prostitution. Now, anybody who lives in that area or driven through the area that we're going to talk about here briefly or momentarily knows that the sex workers tend to dress very scantily. You often see them out there in nothing more than a bra and panties, lingerie, see-through clothing. So that's also an indication of being in the area loitering with the intent to commit prostitution. Now, what this law did, it allowed us to contact the sex workers. It was a misdemeanor. It was committed in our presence. Therefore, we could actually detain them, make arrests, take them to the station, and talk to them. Now, what I'd like you to understand about criminality is most people won't talk to us on the street. They're in the presence of their other sex workers, maybe their pimps. There could be repercussions. So they very rarely talk to us on the street. So what this allowed us to do is actually contact them, remove them from the street, take them back to the station, process them, offer them services, do some outreach, try to get them out of that lifestyle. And that's mainly what we used it for. It was a tool for us to get them off the street and hopefully get them out of that lifestyle. But unfortunately, January 1st of 2023, the Safer Streets for All Act repealed 653.22. Now, this took away our best tool to address prostitution before it actually took place. This law shields people from arrests related to loitering with the intent to engage in sex work. This did not legalize prostitution, but it was a definite step towards that. So what this did was it took away our, like I said earlier, it took away the very tool that we used on a daily basis to contact the sex workers and the sex purchasers to try to get them off the street and to avoid with this right here, what we're seeing. So, of course, the unintended consequences of this, prostitution activity in the area immediately increased. You would sometimes see 20 to 30 sex workers on the street, and I'm not talking about middle of the night, 10 in the morning, 12, they'd be out there. The human traffickers knew this, and they're not just standing by idly, they are looking for new ways to manipulate the law. So this actually increased the amount of human trafficking in our area, and it was meant to actually help the victims of this. There was mass protests. People were coming into city council every 2 weeks. I'm sure you guys are aware of this. voicing their opinion, expressing their anger, rightfully so. They were held hostage in their own neighborhoods. There was not a whole lot we can do. We were out there trying to contact them, but yet there was nothing we could do to take them off the street. We was no longer able to arrest. So what we did, we created a cross-department coordination team consisting of community development, library, community services, public works, city attorney's office, and the police department to address this in a more holistic manner, because this is not something we could arrest our way out of. We didn't have a tool to arrest, so all we could do is get together with the department heads and try to figure out a way to address this. We increased the police presence in the area, and believe it or not, we have our own loitering with the intent to solicit prostitution city code 21-32B, but it's an infraction, which means we can only cite for it. We can't arrest. We streamlined the process for that citation, so there's no longer a report needed. It can just go straight to the city's attorney's office so they can process it. We contacted the hotels and businesses in the area to ensure that they had proper human trafficking and no trespassing signs so we can enforce that. We removed all abandoned vehicles from the focus area, which I will go over in a minute. We provided human trafficking training to the city's street outreach team, and we recently conducted a statewide operation to combat human trafficking where we arrested several human traffickers. They were arrested for pimping, pandering, and conspiracy. And recently, Assemblymember Michelle Rodriguez proposed AB 63, where she is trying to bring back 65322. So we have that tool again to combat prostitution. The City Council recently agreed to send a letter of support for that. Thank you very much for that. And this is our focus area. This is where most of the sex work activity is concentrated. If you can see, it's bordered north and south by East Market Street, and right in the center is Roosevelt. North and south is Kern Street, King Street, and North Madera Avenue. What we propose in this small area is consider establishment of a 6-month pilot program to designate Kern Street between East Alisal and East Market as no parking, including the removal of the food trucks. Now, going back to that word loitering, it's being in a public area for a period of time or repeatedly with no purpose. When we talk to the sex workers and the sex purchasers, the main reason that they give us for being in that area is going to the food trucks. So we propose moving them out of there for a 6-month period to see if that does affect the trafficking, especially going into the summer months where that's the highest activity for prostitution. We'd like to engage a consultant to prepare a lighting needs assessment to identify locations and more lighting and video cameras at strategic areas to enhance community safety and help reduce crime. And lastly, and most importantly, have a community meeting to discuss the potential impact of the recommended actions on the community and discuss other solutions. We tried to have a meeting not too long ago, but unfortunately it was canceled due to weather because it was going to be an outdoor meeting. And with that, we are open for questions.
Thank you very much for the report. And when would we start the pilot program if we're to move forward?
I would recommend doing it as soon as possible because the summer months are coming.
Yes.
We want to definitely get in there before rodeo. That's when it really ramps up. So as soon as possible.
Oh, okay. And so if we would give direction tonight, and those food trucks, which I agree, those trucks are bringing in people into that area, and would those be removed immediately?
So in that area, there are 2 food trucks that have designated locations, and there's 1 truck that has a permit to do roaming. And so the concept of creating a no parking zone or a residential parking zone and removing the food trucks is a concept at this point that we would like to explore. However, we feel it's important to, 1, have the conversation with the city council, but before taking any action and finalizing a pilot program, we would need to have meetings with the community, because there could be, and the businesses that are there along Current Street, because there could be unintended consequences of, of saying no parking or residential only parking. So we would need to further vet. We wouldn't just jump to a 6-month parking program. But we're wanting to see your direction if that is something that we should explore, if you think that's a concept worth engaging the community.
So a community meeting first, and then what I'm hearing of the police department is to move forward as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Because we only have like actually a month and maybe 2 weeks left. Yeah, and some of the residents are here, and they want us to do something now. Okay.
So we don't want to have any unintended consequences to the residents themselves, especially when we're doing a no parking.
And I understand that, but and I understand people need to work and all that, but we're talking about an ongoing problem. The community has spoken so many times, and we need to do this quickly. Thank you.
Turn on the mic. No, thank you for the presentation. If there's an opportunity to bring back some tools for law enforcement to actually be out there, didn't realize the unintended consequences of Senate Bill 357. I think it's probably our responsibility as well to contact our state legislatures and create a movement, right? Because what we're seeing here is unsafe streets. We're seeing young people being taken advantage of. And in terms of what we have going on here locally, I would very much encourage our Salinas Police Department to look into doing something like parking only with parking permits. What we've seen in this neighborhood has been going on for a very long time, probably like 10, 20 years. And it's unfortunate that our Salinas Police Department has to operate with its hands tied behind its back. I think there's a greater benefit behind it. I hear the argument, unintended consequences for local businesses. At the same time, how do we not know that they're also being intimidated or harassed by those that are taking advantage of some of the young people that are out there? Would definitely like to hear or see what the residents continue to have to say, because this is their environment as they see it and know it every day. And I feel like quite often they provide great insights in terms of like kind of patterns in terms of what's going on in their neighborhood. I think it would provide great intel for Salinas Police Department. And having watched some of this, seeing some of these same stories on our local television stations and reading about it online, it's really long overdue. Things that I've heard is that it's really also part of a larger organized, crime between us and Northern California. And if there's anything else that we can do to assist Salinas Police Department in trying to remedy this, I'm very open to hearing any other suggestions that you may have. But thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Aurelio. Jose?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Where do I start? All right, I'll go ahead and start off with touching on AB 63 by Assemblymember Michelle Rodriguez. The city did send a letter of support, and a number of us on the dais were out in Sacramento last month in April for League of Cities, and AB 63 was one of the major things that we were out lobbying for. I know me and Councilmember Barrera were strongly lobbying for it with Assemblymember Laird. Where is AB 63 today in terms of the docket for the state legislature, if you happen to know who might?
I have not been following it, so I don't know where it is as far as the legislature.
Look it up.
Do you have any other insights from any other city staff? Inquire on that? Okay, so we work on that. Could we turn to slide number 8, please? The one depicting the community holds protests by KION. Thank you. When these protests were held, and to date, to the knowledge of city staff, have any of our state representatives come and visited Kern Street? Has Assemblymember Speaker Rivas come to see Kern Street? Has Senator Laird come to see Kern Street? Not their staff, they themselves. I know their staff have been there. I don't know that the
I'd have to defer to Chief Acosta.
To my knowledge, I'm not sure if they've been here. I have spoken to Senator Laird in person regarding this concern and these issues and what he can do to provide support for us, but I don't know if he's visited this particular area.
Well, this is a question/request. My question would be, if it's allowed, if we could send a, similar to a letter of support for AB 63, open invite our state legislators, Assembly and Senate, come and visit Kern Street. I want you to see what the impacts of, what is the other book, 357, of AB 357. Come and visit the neighbors, right? The coalition of residents from the Roosevelt housing community nearby, have them meet with them, right? I think it's really important for them to also understand what the tangible, real life impacts of that law. And from the reason I brought up AB 63 is, from my understanding, it's not moving forward this year, right? And there's a very real, tangible need for relief from our community and communities similar to us across the state to address this. This isn't something that the city can just take on its own. We need state legislative for not just relief, but correction on this particular issue. So the direction for that one would be if we could send a letter of an invitation to our assembly members, maybe not specifically calling out anyone, but just open invite. We'd love to have you see how that's impacting our community, and we'd love to give you a tour of what that looks like, on the ground in Salinas. And we might not have tacos there because it might be during the 6-month period if they respond quickly, right?
That was uncalled for.
Yeah, that. And then if I could just please, on the staff report, page number 2, there's the mention of City Law Section 21-23B in the Salinas Municipal Code, and there's the mention of its correlation to the Penal Code 653.22. Effectively, it's my understanding that the City Council had, in the last year or so, to address this issue on the municipal level, had created some sort of ordinance or policy that required the hotels to do some reporting or data collection around prostitution. Is that not correct?
That's correct. That's the red light districting you're talking about.
Light district.
So we have been working with all the hotels in the area to make sure they have the local human trafficking signage up. It's actually a crime to not have it up there and to have no trespassing signs. So we have something to go on if people are in their property.
So in the staff report, just to quote the last sentence, since the repeal, the police department, with support of the city attorney's office, has issued and prosecuted 39 citations for violations of the city code. Is it for violations of the city code pertaining to the signage and the reporting, or is it pertaining to city code section 21-32B?
It's 21-32.
So 21-32B
Yes.
is the red line district. Okay, just needed that clarification on that one.
Can I speak
Oh.
to that? Good afternoon, Councilor Rhonda Combs, Assistant City Attorney. So they are separate provisions. The provision that we've been prosecuting under is 2132B, which is essentially the city's provision of anti-loitering for prostitution, which is only an infraction, whereas what was repealed was a state penal code violation, which was a misdemeanor, which was a crime under state law.
So as it stands, it's just not a crime at all.
It's a civil crime. Essentially, it's a little less than a crime. It's a civil fine that you get. We refer them to the Marina Court, and the fines are $200 to $500 per citation.
Okay, thank you for that
Sure.
clarification. Page 3 of the staff report, under the cross-department coordination, under the lighting section, there's the identification of $50,000 towards the preparation of a lighting needs assessment for the AVP. I think in the staff, in the presentation, there was the mention of potentially securing additional funding for a study specific to the Kern Street area. Is that how I understood it? Or is it the $50,000 is for the entire AVP and a component of it is to address this?
So the area, our focus area falls within the Alisal Vibrancy Planning area. And the Alisal Vibrancy Plan CIP had designated $50,000 to undertake a needs assessment, lighting needs assessment. We have partnered with Public Works to leverage the funding that we have to conduct a lighting needs assessment for the entire Alisal Vibrancy Planning area. And it will be coming forward to you when we bring our consolidated action plan, our community development block grant consolidated action plan and annual action plan for funding to for the implementation of phase 1 to actually install lighting. So we're trying to piece together funds. It's a big area, but come up with a plan of priority and phasing and then identify funding as we go.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. One of the proposed measures is to establish a 6-month pilot program designated Kern Street and between Alisal and East Market as a no parking zone, including the removal of food trucks. So is one of the options, if we're eliminating the residential component, is the proposal as is to just completely eliminate residential parking, or is it to create a parking district similar to what's around Salinas Valley Health, where only those residents?
So we were contemplating both. We hadn't fully vetted which would be the best route, would want to have conversations with the residents and businesses. So we contemplated just no parking whatsoever, but then felt that would be unrealistic given our city's current parking challenges. And so then we wanted to explore a residential parking program.
Would a residential parking program, not too familiar with what the model is at Salinas Valley Health or if we have any other parking districts like that throughout the city, is there a cost associated for the resident to acquire that parking permit?
No, to my understanding, I'm looking at the Public Works Director, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but we do have one over in the Romy Lane area.
Yeah, there is a cost for setting up a parking area, parking enforcement area. You have to put up signs, which is a cost. You have to print out the parking permits for each resident. The residents have to come in and register to get those permits. That all takes personnel and time. The biggest cost usually is signage that needs to go up.
But there's no cost for the resident.
What's that?
No cost to the resident.
No, well, that was part, yes, we weren't thinking we were going to charge the residents. We were going to do this as a pilot program. But again, we'll have to find funding for it to move it forward.
So since there is a cost, just so that we have a frame of reference, what is that cost for that permit along Romy Lane, if you happen to know it?
I believe it runs in the $30 to $40 a year time frame, because it's paying for the signs and paying for the annual printing of the permits.
Does the fee also account for the enforcement component of it, like to pay for the actual staff that needs to go around the neighborhood as well?
Yeah, the enforcement is not part of the fee. The fee is only to recoup the cost of installing the signs and printing the permits.
Okay, so the actual enforcement component would be an ongoing cost for the city.
Correct, and hopefully we recoup that with the fines that we get.
And as it stands, what's the general policy for a community or a neighborhood that would like to pursue like a permitted parking area or district?
There's a process online on our website. You basically have to get, I think it's 90% of the people in that area to sign up. And they sign a petition, and then we go out there and set it up. Again, realizing that they're going to have to pay for the setting up of that particular parking district.
Okay. I think that's all my questions for right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, to the mayor, very briefly, as of April 29, 2025, that bill was in committee hearing for testimony only, so it's essentially not going anywhere right now.
Thanks for that clarification.
Tony?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I just, talking about our state officials, I just received an email. There's AB 379, Commander Warner, that's just was passed by the Assembly and it's on its way to the Senate, whatever that means, but it's on this issue. Commander Warner, is this your report or Chief Acosta's report? It's your report?
That's all of our reports.
Okay.
We all put our heads together.
Yeah, but you're the spokesperson right now. So, a few years ago, the old Sanborn Inn, I remember your department making a serious sting raid, or whatever you want to call it, because of prostitution. I don't know if you remember that. But one of the managers, motel managers, was involved. They were getting kickbacks for however they rent the rooms per hours or whatever, but there was enough evidence that the hotel manager was involved in getting kickbacks from the prostitutes. Being that you're working with also local hotels, churches, and what have you, do we know, does your department know that none of these managers are involved in any of that?
Well, we haven't opened an investigation into anybody, and they've been very cooperative with any information that they have. Okay. So at this point, we have no reason to believe that they're not totally cooperative.
Yeah. Commander Warner, from you and I, we've been in this community for quite some time, but from time to time, this type of work changes. At Rianda, there was, for a long time, I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, I do.
But not only was there just sex workers, but there was transgenders, and what happens here in the shifting, you know, what creates that? I mean, what do you think? You guys were very successful in Rianda, all of a sudden it disappeared, but it shifts. Do you remember how long ago it shifted to this area?
So Rianda really stopped being functional once we moved the police department to where it's at, which is right across the street from Rianda.
Yes.
So I'm thinking that had something to do with it. Everybody kind of moved on the other side of the freeway, which is the Kern and Kings and Roosevelt area.
Okay. And do you think it was because of the heavy police presence?
I'm thinking that has something to do with it because it was right around that same time that we stopped seeing a lot of traffic through that area.
Yeah. You know, the food trucks that you're talking about, there's two that are there all the time, and then there's one mobile. Were they notified about this meeting? Do you know?
No, I don't know if they were notified about the meeting.
That their business was going to be discussed? We don't know if they weren't notified.
I don't know, sir.
Okay. City manager, do you know?
I would venture to say they probably were not directly notified other than just our normal policy.
Commander Warner, in El Gruyense has been there 20 years. La Perla has been there 10 years. And now the Taqueria Hermanos Rodriguez, the roaming truck, has been there for about 6 to 8 months. My question to you, sir, have you ever had any legal issues with any of these three businesses? Any arrests, any citations, any problems?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah. But yet, in the opening of your remarks, you mentioned prostitutes told you, well, the reason I'm here is I want to enjoy I'm here because of the tacos.
Yes.
So when you're bringing in the food vendors into this report, is it because of those comments you heard from the prostitutes?
This is because of the reasons that most prostitutes, the sex workers, and the sex purchasers use to be in that area.
So is it possible, now I'm sounding like I'm in court or something here, but is it possible, Commander Warner, if I'm up to no good, I'm going to try to tell you something that'll, hey, well, I'm here for this instead of this. Is it possible that they're lying to you?
Definitely.
Okay. My concern here, sir, is that we're bringing in these food trucks and we want to do, I know it's a 6-month pilot program, and we have an eager councilwoman that wants to eliminate them already without really getting any facts. But yet we've never had any legal issues with these people. They were designated there by your group, by the same team that you're working with. They were told this is your space. They paid permits. They abide by what they had to do. They clean up the area. But we want to move them just in case they may be part of this problem. You know, on the signs that no parking, no trespassing, in your department, how effective are we? Okay, so I'm told, well, you need to put no parking signs or no trespassing. Okay, so all of a sudden somebody trespasses in my property. I was told by the police department, put these signs. What's the likely, is a police officer gonna come, hey, there's somebody in my property? Are we enforcing these issues? You know, when we're told don't put the signs up there, do we really enforce them?
So the signs are placed there so we don't have to get permission from the property owner to enforce
Yeah.
the trespassing law on private property,
Yeah.
or no parking, whatever the case may be. So there's a process to do that. You have to actually post it. The signs have to be a certain size. The letters have to be a certain size. We have to have a letter on file.
Yeah. Because you know, Commander Warner, you and I, we've been friends for a while here, but right behind this El Gruyense, there's about 20 homeless people and there's 9 tents and there's a bunch of no trespassing signs, but they cut the fence and it's a mess. And El Gruyense cleans up as much as they can in the outside area, but going inside the fence area, it's really bad. And we've tolerated that. But I see no trespassing signs, but we don't enforce that. As far as, and I share this with the city manager often, I would much rather have a sign gone if we're not going to enforce it because people don't respect the law as it is. And do you think, Commander Warner, and you're a community officer because I've known you for a while, do you think if we make these merchants, these food trucks, part of this team that you have here as our eyes and ears on helping with this issue, do you think that could be a possibility instead of just saying, hey, we're going to move you guys for about 6 months, see how this works?
I would love to try that, but just like Councilman Braha said, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the same result or a different result is insanity.
Yeah, but see, but we
I think
haven't
we need
done
to try
that.
something.
You just told me that these 3 merchants that have been law-abiding, they got permits and they were designated in the same place by your team. But now we're going to remove them because prostitutes are telling us, hey, we're here for the tacos. We're going to see how it works just for 6 months, but should we just move people because there's somebody says, or do we really have evidence that these food trucks are actually causing the problem? 10 years and 20 years.
I'm not
So-
saying the food trucks are causing the problem.
No, let me just stress that. We're not saying the food trucks are having a problem, but this is why we're bringing this to you before we go out there. Because here's what would happen. Let's just be very frank, like you like to speak.
Yes.
Right? So if we went out there and reached out to these food trucks without letting you know first, they're going to call you, and then you're calling me to say, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So we're obviously in this catch-22.
Okay.
So here was, let's bring this to you as a potential strategy. We're not saying the food trucks are actually causing the problem.
Okay.
We have things because people go there, they're using that as a reason to engage in some of this illegal activity. But we're not saying they're the cause of the problem.
Yeah.
So that's all. So we're here asking to see whether you want us to pursue this or not as a strategy.
Thank you, City Manager.
welcome.
That's why I like you. You're a good man of action there. Commander Warner, do you think, what else besides, and I totally agree with you, we need lighting, we need cameras, we do need that. We do need parking. And you mentioned earlier in your report, your department's already taking inoperable vehicles from the area.
Yes.
Is that right? What do you think? Do you think it may be a possibility? And I know it's up to this council, but because I'm looking to your wisdom as a police officer, is it possible to look into the other things that we do need to do, but to allow these food trucks to stay there and figure out ways how they can be part of this team, how they can help us be proactive?
I'm open to all suggestions, and I think this community meeting that we're going to have, the community is going to have a lot of suggestions.
Great, great. I appreciate that. In dealing with the prostitution issue, because it is serious. Besides, because I know I went over there yesterday, and your police officers were present, and it was good enforcement. Just being proactive, being there. Besides this community meeting, any ideas in your professional work that you feel that would help this issue, besides the cameras, besides the lighting? Anything else that you can suggest?
So if AB 63 doesn't pass and we don't get that law back, we're kind of back to square one.
Yeah.
So I think it's even more important that we take proactive steps to address this before it gets out of hand again.
Yeah. Good.
These are the initial steps I think we should take, and then move from here.
Yeah. So in those initial steps that you're talking about is to remove the food trucks?
To discuss moving the food trucks and establishing either no parking or residential parking on that street for a 6-month period to see if that actually does make a difference. Putting up the extra lighting, because it's very dark. If you were there last night, you saw that.
Yeah.
And then put those cameras in those very strategic locations. So they've worked in other locations where we've put up the cameras and the lights, and people know they're under surveillance, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah. You know, earlier today, they asked the attorney had mentioned about the 39 citations. So really, there's no teeth to this thing. I mean, you just cite them and they keep doing whatever they want.
Unfortunately, there's not really teeth to it. It was law, city law, before the state repealed their law, so it was already on our books. We got notification from the district attorney that she would stop enforcing it in mid-2022 before it formally was repealed, which was January 1, 2023. So we started in June of 2022 prosecuting under our own law, but it's only an infraction.
Yeah.
Again, so it's a very light penalty.
Yeah.
The concern is I do believe the legislature is going to address this, and I think they've realized they've harmed local communities by repealing the law, and they want to put it back on, but they're caught in a fight with some other language that's tagged onto it.
Thank you. Ms. Brinton, if this council chooses to make, let me say this nicely, if this council chooses to remove these 3 law-abiding vendors? Because I'm going to advocate for them tonight. What would you do?
So the vendor ordinance is implemented by the Development Engineering Department. So we would work closely with development engineering staff and the food truck vendors to identify alternative locations that would be agreeable to them for that period of time.
Yeah. And Ms. Brenton, as you know, because this falls in your department, we've moved some of these merchants different times. I mean, some of them are way out there where nobody's out there, but we move them everywhere. I know these people were at a different spot years back, and now they were told, this is your designated spot. Anything that you would say as far as, I could understand if these people are breaking the law or they're getting cited for something, but they've been obeying the law, paying their permits, doing what, cleaning their areas they're told. Any other suggestion that you may have that would go along, maybe taking, because we do need to take care of this area because of that prostitution. But do you see these people staying there and still be able to help the police department?
So I think there, after we speak to the community, we receive your feedback, we speak to the community. It's not necessarily an either or. You know, there can be a blend of some of these suggestions. So maybe we focus on a residential parking program, but the vendors are allowed to stay instead of just saying no parking or removing the vendors. So that's why I was talking about, you know, we need to have some more conversation and evaluate so that we fully understand any consequences or impact that we may not intend, but move. I totally agree that we need to move quickly in having these conversations. And sometimes you have to fall forward a little bit to be successful. You just have to try something. And then if it works, great. If it doesn't, you pivot and you try something else. So I also think we should not be afraid to take action, because we can't just continue to evaluate. We do need to take action. So we have to be willing to have conversations, evaluate it, make a decision. If we fall forward, we fall forward. And then we keep moving forward.
You know, I totally agree with you with taking action, but when you're impacting, it's easy for us to tell people just move, you know, we're gonna move you somewhere else, and not even taking the consideration in their business the way it is. But no, but I understand that. We need to take action, but at the same time have empathy for individuals that have really tried to work with this city. Because when I heard about the no parking, I also thought, well, if they do stay there, putting no parking, well, where are their customers gonna park? So, yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
Unintended consequences. You know, we have to take action, but sometimes and I appreciate all the staff time that's gone into this, because it's been a really, I don't know, 4 months, how long is it? It's been going on for 5 months, I think, maybe even longer than that. But I want us to take action, but I want us to be careful with unintended consequences, because if we move, I mean, we have to do something, right? So what happens if they move to another neighborhood? Are we prepared to deal with that at the moment? You know, because I know a lot of it's going to have to do with how much law enforcement we can dedicate to it, right? So I want that to be part of the conversation. Do we have any options to raise the penalty or do anything on our city side to strengthen that? What does that look like?
I'm reluctant to recommend that at this time, partly because there could be a potential preemption issue here. Our law was on the books and hasn't been challenged. The state repealed theirs, so we have a good basis to argue this is for the health and safety of our citizens. But in the meantime, if the state does pass theirs and it becomes a penal code violation again, it will for sure preempt us. and we'll have stronger teeth. It'll be a misdemeanor. There'll be $1,000, up to $1,000 fine, and up to 6 months in jail, in addition to that $1,000 fine available, also prosecuted by the district attorney's office. So that has a lot more teeth than us trying to hammer at it with the city code and become really strong in that regard.
City Manager, is there anything that prevents us, or if the council gives direction, can't we rent some of these mobile camera systems with the lights that are used in you know, let's say, shopping centers? Is that something that we could take immediately?
Again, I think based on your direction today, if that was something you want us to respond immediately, I would want to do it after we have the community meeting,
Right.
and then have that conversation, and then certainly bring it back.
Right. Okay, and then the reality of enforcement. Oh, Mr. Jacobs has some comments.
I want to make one comment on those portable cameras. They're generated. So there's a generator attached to them most likely. So they're going to be making noise. And most neighborhoods don't like that kind of noise 24 hours a day.
Right. I think this is when the community meeting is going to come out great, because I'm pretty sure some of the neighbors or churches might plug those into their houses if the city supplied them. So, you know, they want to be part of the solution too. I want to talk about your perspective on the reality of parking enforcement. You know, that's handled by LAS, right? It's not going to be our police department.
Correct.
Right, so if we were to do something like a parking permit, does that mean we're going to dedicate some of the existing LAS parking enforcement to that specific area to monitor regularly, or what would be kind of the thought process?
That would just become another route that they patrol for parking violations. They do currently patrol all our parking districts, and that would just be one more area that they would need to patrol. They also do get Q alerts. If you put a Q alert about a illegally parked vehicle, it goes to LAS and they respond.
In addition to that, so again, there's a lot of stuff that we're working on. One of them is parking enforcement. A lot of the council members send me emails and calls on our ability to enforce our parking. So one of the things that we're looking at is Jose, he's working with both police and public works to look at how do we resource that better, how do we work with LAS, you know, how do we structure that program moving forward. So if this was to be added as an addition to that, we would certainly be looking at how can we honor the 6-month pilot program and still maintain our rest of our program. Because it won't work if this is done at the expense of other or vice versa. So in short answer to your question is, if we do this, we have to figure out how to enhance that program or else it won't work. We just can't assume it in our existing structure.
Yeah, I think that's important because, you know, some of my residents have questions about the routes of LAS as well, you know, if they're visiting their neighborhoods. So I was just kind of curious on that. And then do the food trucks or the taco trucks have any rights under the agreements that they sign with the community development department, or how does that work?
So they have a permit for, two of them have permits for designated spots. So as I said, we would need to work with them if they were to no longer be able to be in that designated spot, as we have with others, to find another location that would be their designated spot for any time period. But again, you know, I don't think it's, I just wonder, we're having a discussion. I'm hearing that there are a lot of concerns in terms of the removal of food trucks. We definitely need to sit down and talk to the food truck owners, get their perspective as to approach, as well as talk to the residents. Like, do they want a residential parking permit? Do they want limitations, you know, on their parking? And what the impact would be to the neighborhood. So I think we definitely appreciate hearing your perspective and as well as impacts to the city, not just this neighborhood, and how we would really implement it. And now we need to go to the community.
And can part of this discussion be about, since we're going to do a pilot program, however that looks like, a dedication of law enforcement officers to this? For example, Are we going to have two shifts or something that are dedicated to monitoring that in case it moves? Or what's our police presence going to be during this enforcement period?
In case what moves them?
Like let's say that, moves down the street to the next neighborhood. Are we going to be monitoring that? Or the district?
Yes. So the short answer is yes. So my direction to all my officers is you drive through that area on your way to other calls. You monitor it. Have they moved? What are we going to do in response to that? So we're reactive. Police department is reactive. Wherever it goes, we will follow. And we will reconvene the team again, and we'll talk about that area.
I don't know what the possibility is. I know we're short on resources, but I mean, if there was a possibility that for a period of time there could be, I'd say like a prostitution, a dedication of police prostitution unit or something along those lines to try to be consistent. I know you say you guys go along, along different calls, but a little bit more structured or more. Do you get what I'm saying, Commander?
So when we do, on the rare occasions we have a couple extra officers, what we do is we'll send them out and they'll be problem oriented. So whatever that issue is for that day, if it's bicyclists in the road, they're going to go out and deal with that. If it's prostitution, they're going to go out and deal with that. If it's a graffiti issue in this area, they'll go out and deal with that. That's how we've been using our resources.
All right, cool, thank you. And my only other question was for this community meeting and engagement, because I did see that you guys in the staff report did list churches and hotels. How are we going to reach out to those hotels or the churches? I know the pastor was here earlier from that neighborhood, but how are we going to reach out to them?
So the hotels, we have them on speed dial. We check in with them every week or so just to make sure that everything's okay. Have they seen any prostitution activity? Officer Robert Balaoro, Officer Chucky Rios, Officer Danny Garcia, most of my officers, they go out to that area, they make contact with all the residents, the hotel owners, managers, and as well as the church.
Okay. Yeah, just as much as we can do with community outreach. A couple of months ago, I want to say maybe 6 or 7 months ago, I had a chance to meet with some hotel owners, and they didn't think there was any hope to resolving this prostitution issue. But at the time, we didn't have we had an intermediate chief and things like that. And so one of the requests from them was that they collectively could meet with the police department. Because I think everyone I've spoken to wants to address this issue. I know there's been some folks who say in the past there was some hotels who maybe were participating in some of this behavior, but I know that there was about a group of 7 of them who'd love to have a conversation with the police department. So that would be my ask. That concludes my questions.
All right. Let's head out to the public. Any public comment on this issue?
Just can't wait. Good evening, Mayor Donahue and staff. Mayor Donahue, no, you are my son's first basketball coach, Nick Nance. And I just want to say that I want to represent New Hope and on King Street and the bridge on Roosevelt. And the parking situation, that all sounds fine, but the members wouldn't have anywhere to park. We wouldn't have, right now we're struggling for parking on King. I go to both of them. And I lived here in Salinas almost 50 years, which you've been around my children. All 3 of my sons graduated from Salinas High. I am appalled. I was going to church at Pacific Grove, and just this year I said, I'm going to come back to my city of Salinas. And when I take my grandchildren to church, and my grandson has to see someone with a thong on, bent over with their butt sticking out, and they want to invite their friends to church, think about your children. We live in South Salinas. Who wants to invite their friends to church, and then when you drive down the street, they go back and tell their parents, we saw naked women at our friend's church. Do you think the parents would want them to come back to our church again? I don't think so. So what I want to say, the food truck is a decoy for the pimps, honey. Let me tell you, they can go over there and say, oh, we were buying food from the food truck. And the little motel on the corner of Kern and Roosevelt is in the dark, and that's where most of the prostitutes go. And it's gotten so bad, I almost had to throw a towel over my husband's face going to church. Because when they bend over in the car, I got to tell him to keep driving so he won't look that way. It's almost like a cannery row on the weekends. It's bad. We have church not just on Sundays, but we have church services throughout the week. We are fighting for parking on Roosevelt at the bridge, Pastor Garnett. We're fighting for parking at Pastor Smith's church on King Street. This needs to be addressed immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es María Chávez, vivo en el Distrito 4. Ya oí la solución que dijeron. Me quitan una preocupación y miedo, angustia por todos los que vivimos allí. Ya nuestros hijos, hijas y nietos no se van a sentir incómodos, con miedo cuando caminan por ahí. Ojalá lo hagan lo más rápido posible y sea esta la solución al problema. Muchas gracias. Gracias a todos, alcalde, concejales, policías y a todos los que nos ayudaron para esto. Muchas gracias.
Good evening. My name is Maria Chavez, and I live on District 4. I just heard the solution. This is going to take away my fears, my concerns, and my anguish. Our children, our grandchildren, and our daughters are not going to feel uncomfortable walking down the street. I hope the solution, we can implement it as soon as possible. And thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, council members, police officers, and anyone who helped us to implement the solution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Name is Eric Peterson, and what I'm going to say I've said to a succession of city councils, so some of you may have heard this before, but I know two women very well who are both former prostitutes. One is out of this area, one grew up in Salinas, dropped out of North Salinas High, and apparently is one of your successes, because when I met her, she was recycling cans, but she had all the stories about what she'd put up with for years. One thing both these women have in common is they had minimal skills. They couldn't get well-paying jobs. And I can't speak for anybody other than these two, but if they had had decent jobs, they wouldn't have been prostitutes in the first place. Also, Dan Burden, who is in charge of blue zones nationally, says there are 24 reasons for bike lanes. 2 have to do with bicycles. One of the other 22 is that bike lanes are a deterrent to prostitution. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Pimentel. I am representing my husband, who's the owner of Tacos y Mariscos La Perla, one of the food trucks on Kern Street. We just learned that part of the solution is considered to move our trucks off of Kern Street. I'd like to urge you to reconsider this for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, we are an established and honest business. We have had to relocate more than one time due to the city planning, first off of Market Street over to Kern, where we once did business for more than 20 years. It has taken us years to slowly build up our business again, and it is nowhere close to where it was before. Secondly, please take into consideration Kern Street is what is being called the issue. Well, yes, it was the issue at one time, but most of the people here can agree that prostitution has moved off of Kern Street. Now it's on King Street and Roosevelt and further beyond. There is no more roaming on Kern, and what you have now is a problem with parking on Kern Street. Consider alternatives. Implement 30-minute parking on Kern Street so that people don't park for hours on end, and take away parking from our honest paying customers consider permitted parking like there is on the south side of Salinas for streets like King and Roosevelt so that residents can find parking in front of their homes. Since you are not able to prosecute for loitering, soliciting for prostitution is still a crime. Target the Johns who sit there for hours in their cars, prosecute them for soliciting a prostitute. Eventually, this problem will move away. I urge you to take moving our business off of Kern Street off of the table as an option for this issue. We are not the problem. Thank you.
Good evening. This is a doozy here tonight. I will say I commend you all putting in this time tonight. This is a lot of time to be putting in. Concerning is that our city leadership will allow our cops to be bullied by the hookers, get pushed around. The toughest guys in town and gals back here in uniform are being hogtied. Now, we just saw how the state of California passes illegal laws, such as we're all going electric, right? Well, that just got smashed. Okay, the state, and I will say, I would bet probably $1 million, except for maybe one, he's not elected here. All of you voted for Gavin Newsom, I would bet. And he's a disaster, a disgrace, an evil person. And so here we are with our city, and I can remember, let's change it a little bit up here because I don't want to smash on everybody all the time. Since I was a little boy, I remember driving out and all the military out there, there'd be hookers. Same place. Hasn't changed. I'm 50. Hadn't changed. Always been hookers there. We're letting our cops get bullied. We're too, I guess, not willing to fight Gavin Newsom. We passed some prostitution laws here. And when they go against what the state says, that's okay, because the power's here in this room. You have the power. Take the power. Fight them. We're behind you on that. But I'll suggest a couple of canine units, some German Shepherds, because the pussycats don't like them. And go right on up next to them when they're getting that food. Say, what are you doing here, honey? Just getting food? Or are you being a hooker? Anyways, thank you.
Buenas noches, en español. Mi nombre es Juan Medina y quiero decirles que por los acontecimientos que se ha surgido, estoy preocupado por esta situación y preocupado porque durante 20 años he estado vendiendo tacos ahí en la lonchera y nunca había surgido ni un problema por causa de la prostitución de las mujeres que vienen de otro pueblo a prostituirse ahí en esas áreas. Y yo, por lo tanto, veo que el problema para movernos nosotros de allí nosotros no seríamos el problema por existir esa prostitución ahí, que ha sido por mucho tiempo ha surgido eso. Y por eso, de mi parte, estoy preocupado. Durante 20 años operando allí, y pues yo quisiera que se tomara en consideración ese punto, señores del jurado, para si podemos obtener un apoyo para seguir operando allí y no trasladarnos a otra área donde vamos a estar solos, porque durante 20 años hemos estado operando y los clientes hemos hecho clientes allí. No es fácil comenzar en otra área. Por lo tanto, me gustaría que tuvieran esa consideración, señores del jurado, y tomaran ese punto, esa consideración hacia nosotros que trabajamos ahí honradamente y la gente que viene de otros pueblos a prostituirse allí nos hacen daño a nosotros, trabajando honradamente y con los debidos permisos que la misma ciudad nos otorga y la ciudad muy inteligente para solucionar esos problemas que no lo dudo que así va a ser. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Juan Medina, and I'm very worried about the recent decisions that have been taken here. I'm really worried because I have been selling tacos from my taco truck without any problem, any issues for 20 years. I have been working in this area, and for me, it is a problem to move. And the thing is that this problem of the prostitution did not come up because of us. We're not the reasons that the prostitution exists there. I'm worried. I've been working there for 20 years. I'm a hard worker. I'm a humble, hard worker that have been working there and operating my business for 20 years. It's not our fault. These people, these prostitutes come from other town. They work around us. So we're not really harming anyone. The city gave us the permission to work there, and I think the city very intelligently is going to find a way to be able to solve this issue. So, people of the jury, if you can please. Okay. Can you please consider my request? And he's just added that he is from Tacos Gurriense.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, anyone on Zoom? Okay. Adam?
I'll keep it brief, and I really appreciate that consideration of unintended consequences was brought up. That's usually kind of my thing, but fantastic that that's being considered, and clearly there's a need for further dialogue as you're having with some of the community members who are there tonight. So thank you, community members, for showing up and speaking your piece. The only thing I wanted to add to the conversation is that. There are existing consequences, right? In addition to the unintended consequences, the business, as the picture that the police chief showed, right? There's already traffic and parking impacts from this activity on this area. So, and one of the community members even brought up that her churchgoers cannot find parking. So there's the impact already now. So I don't think that should deter the council from having further conversation with the community and doing whatever necessary to really address this issue. So thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Okay. All right, we will go ahead and close public comment and then come back to council for direction. There's no action to be taken tonight, just direction. Andrew, why don't I start with you?
Sure. My request is that, we do as thorough outreach as we can, whether that be knock on doors, send out a message. I mean, as much as we can do to get all those people involved. It has to be a wide radius. Also, I'd like to attend the meeting. I think that this issue is obviously it impacts that neighborhood the most, but it's a community issue, and that meeting be a public meeting so everyone can participate. Just that outreach, I think there needs to be consideration for the food trucks. I know we're kind of trying to find out what we can do to fix this problem, but we have to have consideration for people who have been there for a long, long time and really see the core. And I know that the residents will work with PD and the churches and the hotel owners. I'm confident that if there could just be a facilitation of what needs to be done, I think it's an opportunity for the community to also help with whatever they can. So, but as we develop that program, I do hope we consider everyone's voice, and yeah, that's my direction.
Okay. Very good. Tony?
Yeah, Mayor, any idea as far as being that we're moving quickly, any idea when this community meeting may take place? Forgive the interruption over there.
No. We'll try to set it up as quickly as possible, but there needs to be notification. So I'm not going to say next week or the following week, but probably in a few weeks. If you think about over the next month, we might be setting it up. If it's going to be widely advertised, widely contacted, it's going to take some time. We need to find the location, and we need to just engage. Yeah. And so it's not something that's going to happen next week, but we hope to have it by the time maybe you come out of your break, we have some much more dialogue with the community.
Thank you. And to Chief Acosta, where's the man at? Chief Acosta, I just want to say thank you. You know, since you've been here, you boosted morale, and I say this because I hear this from your officers. You have a good man there right behind you, Commander Warner. I appreciate the report. And you know, sometimes it may look like we're on opposite sides, but we're just trying to improve our community altogether. I really want to thank you for being proactive. You know, I took a little stroll out there. I actually went to buy tacos, nothing else, but your police officers were there. They were feeling great about their work, and I really appreciate that. And you're boosting up morale, and I think we're going to resolve this issue somehow. Maybe by those cameras and lights, we can sell tacos and raise some funds, City Manager. Thank you, Chief Acosta.
Thank you.
Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. My general direction would be to actually move forward with the recommendation staff presented as presented, including considering moving the food trucks, and let me elaborate on why. The staff report is pretty clear in that no one is pointing fingers at the food truck saying the food truck is the cause, right? I quite frankly don't think anyone is walking around Kern Street in 50-degree weather with a thong to purchase tacos, right? Like, people just don't do that, to be quite frank, right? The issue is not the food trucks, and that's not necessarily what we're trying to get at. What we're trying to get at is that oftentimes, and to those that have been on ride-alongs with PD, particularly on Kern Street, and I know when I've done the ones I've been on, I specifically asked, like, I want to go through Kern Street, and let's not just go through Kern Street. I want to spend some time there, right? If I could get to talk to someone, give me that opportunity, right? And oftentimes, the food trucks get cited time and time again. I wish we had data to also back that up, but that's a very common answer that you get when someone gets pulled over or stopped. That's a very quick response to get. Are there other potential unintended consequences? Yes, potentially, but like stated many times today, we can't keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result, right? This is a pilot program. There's still the opportunity for community input that's still going to be had. I'm assuming this is still going to come back to the council for final approval. So this is just general direction. This doesn't mean that actually is going to fall through. I just want our community to have all the options on the table, to have a full toolkit to really look at the picture holistically as to what are their options, and taking this off the table before the community itself even has an opportunity to have that discussion, I think is not necessarily the route we want to take. I would rather move forward with all the recommendations as presented, again, including moving the food trucks. And I think a general direction from the council as well has been, even if we do pursue moving the food trucks, work collaboratively with them to help identify an adequate location for the 6 months. And if it's going to be a permanent thing thereafter, again, continue to work with them proactively. Those would be my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aurelio?
Yes, I'll also support police department's recommendation. In terms of the parking, I know that sometimes that may cause financial hardship on some people. So I don't know if we could have something where maybe instead of $20 to have a parking permit, maybe it's like $20 for the first vehicle and then like $10 for each additional vehicle. I think in the ideal situation, like we want to resolve this issue, right? And if we do this right in 6 months or a year, I think what we want to see is, this gone from this neighborhood. And, I think we also need a plan that, it may pop up a block over or 2 blocks over, right? And so we really need to continue to send a message to those that are part of this. It's organized crime, right? It's organized crime. We need to call it what it is, right? When you have people that are working together, because I think we've heard the residents come out and say that, you have lookouts at an entrance and an exit, right? You have, businesses that are probably scared and have to turn a blind eye for their own safety, right? And I didn't hear in the report is, you know, in terms of the taco trucks, we want to support the taco trucks, but if you're a taco truck vendor and you're parked out there and you see a young person dressed only in their underwear and you don't call it in to report a suspicious activity, that needs to get done. Because it's embarrassing to have a family try to go to church and this is what their children sees. That is where we need to draw the line. The businesses, if you sell a good product, your customers will find you. They will not leave you, and they will support you if you have to leave, because of the public safety comes first. Absolutely. I can't believe that we're defending like these 3 taco trucks when there's this big issue here. And I really want to ask, like the taco truck vendors here, have you ever called one in? Have you ever reported it? I really want to know, because you know what? It's so disturbing that this you know, we've got this barricade that we're putting in front over our community. So I really want to stand behind our community. I know that they couldn't make it out here tonight, but they have been very vocal. They have spoken up, and they are drawing the line, and we need to stand behind our residents, period. We need to stand behind Salinas PD. You guys are already operating with your hands tied behind your back, and it's time for us to throw our back behind Salinas PD.
Gloria?
Okay. So, Chief, thank you for an excellent report. Officer Sergeant, or I can't remember.
Commander.
Yes, Commander Warren, thank you. I want to echo Councilmember Salazar, his comment. The community has been coming, and various times, probably since January or December, all the residents from that area, Roosevelt, New Hope Church, I know Pastor Smith and some of your congregation also have been coming, and you know, we really need to do something now. Our community has spoken. They feel unsafe, but I also want to look at the issue on the parking situation. If we are going to charge, we need to kind of find out from the residents, because $30 can be a lot for some people. Are we going to have a system where we can waive it? I don't know. So I'll leave that to staff. But I also want to say, yes, we need to relocate, and I'll use the word, relocate the taco trucks. It's a pilot program. Let us see what's going to happen to make this community around that area safe. Again, some of those girls, they're so young, they could be my granddaughters. And it's sad that that's been going on for a long time, but now we need to take action for everyone. But again, we need to work with your businesses and talk about relocation. But I will support the staff report from Chief Acosta and our staff.
Okay, thank you. You know, I'm looking at the City Cross Department Coordination Team, and you know, 5 different departments came together to come up with a plan and a framework of something they think might work towards the objective of either solving or seriously degrading the problem. And I think we have to trust their judgment. I do think Councilmember Barrera and Councilmember Sandoval's point of there is a point about, you know, a serious conversation with the food vendors is important, and this community meeting is important also because, you know, for instance, that gets you into the specifics of, you know, what type of parking scenario you're going to look at. And I think we do have to ask, because I would want the feedback of the residents, you know, to Aurelio's point, you know, a good product, and I understand the inconvenience, but I also wonder, I mean, is, you know, 50% of that business just walking over from the neighborhoods, or people driving to it, in which case that would suggest they have a following. And so if they know where to find a particular truck, you know, that they will go. But so I think that needs to be pushed a little bit. And I generally don't do, but, and I know we can't do it, but there is an element that kind of goes, I kind of like what Michael Leip said, let's push the edge of the envelope a little bit. You know, Sacramento has no problems with unfunded mandates. So there's part of me that says, you know what, we're gonna, whatever the outside of the edge of the envelope is, we're gonna push it because we got elected to protect and serve this community. I mean, I know we raise right hands for various whatever constitution we're following, but the simple fact is, Sacramento really exacerbated this problem, and I think we do have to have a bit of a mindset of we're gonna do what we need to do for our community. But I think this is the best framework to start with a quick as possible engagement with the neighborhood to get all four elements vetted. But you know, on balance, I'm inclined to support the recommendation of what was presented to us. You know, because you know, Chief, you've been very proactive. You're not sitting around waiting. You know, several weeks ago or a couple months ago, when this problem came up, it's, you know, there was none of the, oh, not enough people, not enough money. Okay, here's what we're going to do. And I think we have to have that type of approach to this. And you know, just a lot. The people, we know a lot of people didn't show up, but we also know they're there. And so I think this is the approach that addresses that. But I do think we need to show as much sensitivity, but as we can. But at the end of the day, we've got to make a decision to try something. And then if it doesn't work, we'll try something else.
Mayor, so as you're talking about if it doesn't work, being that the vendors are here, so they will understand and there's no misunderstandings, when does it take place? What happens right now in the meantime? We don't know.
Sure. No, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, first of all, tonight we're just providing directions.
Yes.
But I mean, as I understand the package, there's these four elements, but there was a fifth that is equally important: community engagement and feedback from the neighborhood. I mean, that goes hand in hand with the four recommendations. But I support the approach of the.
I think we all support the chief, but my question is, nothing happens till after this meeting. Am I understanding this correctly?
Okay, then if I can answer.
Yeah, please.
Nothing will happen till it comes back to the council. It's, the recommendations are presented, the feedback from the community meeting is presented, and then you will at that point take action.
Yeah, thank you. But just so there's no misunderstanding, I think we all support the chief on this.
Oh, completely understand. Completely understand. I think each of us is simply providing, here's our thoughts based on what was presented to us. I mean, I think we're all in complete agreement supporting the chief and the department, and we're concerned about the vendors. But in fairness to everyone concerned, they can see in the clear light of day in Channel 25, here's how each of us is thinking. And then we'll get the report.
I think it's also important to emphasize that we're going to reach out to the community, and this is more than just a police response. We can park 15 officers there And it's still going to be difficult if we don't deal with some of these other issues, right? So there's lighting, there's the infrastructure, there's all of that. So I think it's just important to understand that every one of these departments have a role. And they have a future role because based on your direction, we're going to be implementing.
Thank you. I might just add reminder, invitation to our state legislature, right? It's very clear Sacramento created this problem. Sacramento needs to fix it. Let's invite them to Salinas. Give them a tour of Kern Street.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
In fact, we'll invite them for a meal.
Yeah, and they should bring their children.
At one of the food trucks. So.
And they should bring their children, if they have children.
There you go.
Same with the council members should
What
bring
time
their
do you
children.
go to church? Because we know that's when they'll. Okay, we'll invite them to come to church. and the meal that follows afterwards. Okay. All right. Okay. I think we've provided some direction. Know everyone's thinking. Okay. So the approximately 6 p.m. study session will now begin. So let this kind of be a little word to the wise. When you look at our estimates for council on time, do so at your own risk. So with that, Selena, you are front and center.
Yeah, so the binders. I like to tee it up a little bit.